Warning! This show contains material that some listeners may find troubling, including discussions of intense horror movie themes, explicit language, movie spoilers, and women speaking. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, horror fans. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Eleanor.
And welcome to Horror Sandbox, the podcast where we dig around in horror films and see what we can unearth.
That's right. Before we get started with today's movie, Charlie, how are you coping with the horrors?
Okay, so I have two favorite things in life. Probably more, but one is obviously horror movies. The other is trash reality television. And
Yes,
we are deep in trash season right now. There's a new Summer House that's airing right now. My husband and I have just started watching Below Deck, which is fantastic. There's some new Love is Blinds I need to catch up on, and Secret Lives of Mormon Wives just started up again. So I'm just like in a sea of trash, and it's fantastic.
What is it that draws you to these shows? Because I don't think I've seen a single episode of any of these.
Yeah, I think what I like about them the most, there's two, is that I can just turn my brain off when I watch them. I feel like I'm just go all day long, always planning, always doing stuff. And then I can put these on and I can have them in the background while I play video games or I cross stitch or I work on the podcast. So, and they're still entertaining and I can keep up with everything that's going on because, again, it's trash and I don't really have to tune in. And I think that's what I like about it. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my coping this week. What's yours been?
Well, I love thrifting and I love a good estate sale. Well, I may have to quit estate sales because I'm not quite certain that I can top this one. If you don't know how they work, for the listeners, essentially a company comes in, maybe you're moving, you're downsizing, you came into an inheritance with a house full of stuff and you want to kind of get rid of most of it. A company will come in, they'll help you price everything, and then they just do a sale and people show up at your house and buy all of your stuff and carry it away for you. The company takes a very large percentage, but it can be a very helpful tool for some families to use. You can get cool deals, you can get vintage stuff, you can get really unique pieces, funky art, weird clothes, strange collections. It's interesting even if you never buy anything. So I went on the last day of a sale, which usually everything's marked down quite a bit by then, but also it's very picked over. So like the odds that you're going to find something specific that you're looking for are pretty slim. Well, I found the most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen. It's technically a vintage cigar cutter, but it's shaped like a guillotine. And the blade actually rises and falls, and there are little Medusa heads on top. So in fact, if you want to Google it and look at it, if you just Google vintage cigar cutter guillotine Medusa, you will find it'll probably be your first result. But it is gorgeous. It's, I don't know, maybe the size of it's probably 8 inches tall, I think. And it's gold-plated metal. I don't think it's real gold, but it's stunning, and now it sits as a book and on my bookshelf, and it's beautiful and I love it.
So Eleanor sent me a picture of this and I gasped audibly when I saw it. It is gorgeous. And the fact I called Charlie and said, I'm sending you a picture, don't open it until we're talking. I called her and made her let me listen to her reaction because I was so excited. It was beautiful. It really is. I can't believe everyone just walked past that. The fact that made it to the last day of a sale. I mean,
it's meant to be.
You. Yes.
Meant to be.
Yeah.
My littlest, when I brought it home, immediately wanted to play with it, and he's like, I can cut my toy heads off with it. I was like, no. Fantastic. No. First of all, the blade is very dull. I made sure.
You should. But yeah, it's just kidding.
I feel like if I kept it on my desk at work, perhaps I would sharpen it and maybe use it to I don't know. I'd find a use for it.
I love
but
it.
No, it belongs on my bookshelf and that's where it is. So That's my coping.
It's a good one.
Okay, so Charlie, what are we digging into today?
Okay, so today we are doing The Ritual, 2017. It's directed by David Bruckner, written by Joe Barton, and it's starring Rafe Spall, Asher Ali, Robert James Collier, and Sam Troughton. And the IMDb summary of this movie is that a group of old college friends reunite for a trip to the most dangerous country in Europe, Sweden, encountering a menacing presence there stalking them. So, Eleanor, what do you have for a Bloody Shovel award for this movie?
Listeners, I want you to picture your very excited host of this podcast just basically sitting on her hands and squealing this entire episode because I love this movie. I will talk about it more at the end, but I love this movie, and one of the things I absolutely love about this movie is the monster. I think it's the best horror monster that there ever is. Yes, I understand that's going to be very controversial. I don't care. That's my Bloody Shovel.
It is a pretty cool monster. I'll give you that. But I'm curious to see what more you have to say about it. My Bloody Shovel, not as intense as yours, is that it is the most comically timed punch in a horror movie, which we'll talk about when we get to that point. However, I feel like As Above, So Below, the Stone Vampire Punch might already rival this one. We'll see. Maybe I'll have to keep a list of like best horror movie punches.
It's a very good punch, the one in this movie. I would say it might rival the cop barreling into Pap out of nowhere from As Above, So Below.
That's a good one too. But that's not, we could just do most comically timed physical attack. But yes, yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
But okay, let's dive into it. So the movie opens up with 5 friends in a pub, and they're discussing where they want to take a trip together, a little reunion trip. And the one guy who we learn is Rob mentions hiking to Sweden, but all of his friends are like, why would we go hike where we want to go drink and have fun? So they all brush him off and they leave the pub and they're walking home, and Rob's still like, Sweden, Sweden, Sweden. And then they walk past a liquor store, and the one guy, Luke, wants to keep partying. So he convinces Rob to jump in the liquor store with them and grab a bottle of vodka. While they're in there, it gets like kind of quiet, and you realize nobody else is in the liquor store until the camera pans to the clerk, and the clerk's hiding behind the counter and they're all like bloodied up. And then a group of armed men come out from a back room, and it's obvious that this place is getting robbed. And the way Luke responds to this is he runs and hides around the corner so the men don't know he's there, and then he sits there silently while he watches Rob get murdered with a machete, which I felt like was a very random murder. The reason they did it was because he wouldn't give them his wedding ring, which, like, first off, just give him the wedding ring. But second off, why are you murdering a dude over like a petty theft? Like, talk about jail time. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's this scene too, that murder, it's very well done. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. The first time I was watching, I was not expecting it at all. So it gets you very good. The way they show Luke hiding and hesitating, I mean, nobody knows how you're going to react when something like that happens until you're right in the middle of it. But I thought the movie did such a good job of showing somebody like hesitating and like certainly regretting it, but also not being able to do anything, like being powerless in that moment. And I just, it is a haunting scene.
It is haunting. And and I think it's cool. It's discussed more throughout the movie. Like, was it Luke's fault that his friend was murdered or not? But like, in all seriousness, if you're already hiding, like, first off, you're not expecting these guys to machete your friend in the face. And then it's like, well, it's probably the smarter thing to stay hidden because it's either one of you dies or both of you dies. So yeah. But anyway, okay. So after that, there's a very sudden cut, and it's Luke waking up in a tent in a mountain in Sweden, and it says 6 months later. So all the friends are there. We find out their names are Hutch, Phil, and Dom, and then Luke's the other one. They all come out of their tents, and it's a traditional cue of like intense music and shots of the group hiking the trails, which is pretty much what most of the first half of this movie is. And then we get Dom complaining for the first time during this hike, and you could tell Dom's really the one that did not want to come here. And Hutch is super into it, and he makes a cool statement. He's like, these mountains were smashed by Nordic gods with big bastard hammers, which is a little bit of foreshadowing. It's our setup that Dom's going to be the complainer and Hutch is the one that's, prepared. He's got the map, the compass, the planning, and all of that. Well, Dom has his expensive shoes that he hasn't broken into yet.
Yeah, he didn't really plan ahead or take the trip seriously, it seems. I also thought it was really interesting when they show that they're waking up and they've been camping that night. They're all in individual tents and it's clearly very, very cold. So I don't know if that's very standard for this type of a trip or if that's just the vibe of these group of friends. But I would think you would want to at least do like two per tent so that you can kind of share a little bit of body heat like within the tent. You don't even have to snuggle to benefit from that, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Just to have two bodies in the tents. I wonder, because they are like hiking, and I've never hiked like a multi-day hike with my tent on my back, but maybe like you have to do smaller tents for that. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there's options there.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? Maybe it's just the way it is for them. Men, they don't want to bunk together.
Yeah.
But okay, so after some hiking, the friends, they find a place on the top of a little mountain hill, and up on the top they make a memorial to honor Rob. Obviously they're here because Rob was the one who wanted to come here. And they go around in the circle and all take a swig out of a flask for Rob. And this scene kind of sets us up for this is the first sign that Dom and some of the group kind of hold Luke responsible for Rob's death. But yeah, so they go around and they all take a drink for Rob and then they dump the rest out for him. And it's funny, there's this like awkwardly comic moment where the flask is like seems bottomless, like it keeps pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring, and Phil just kind of like awkwardly stares at, I think it's Hutch, while he's dumping it out, and I just thought it was funny.
It is so funny. It's like this little pocket flask or whatever, but it's dumping out like the contents of a giant bottle of wine. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
I also kind of thought it was like they were looking at like, well, you like we could have done another round and then you could have dumped just like a little bit or something. Now you're wasting it all.
Well, that's what, yeah, like they certainly could have drank more. But yeah, that was my first thought. But anyway, Hutch and Luke walk over to the side and they're like looking over the mountains, reminiscing about Rob. And Hutch reassures Luke that it's not his fault. And while they're looking over the mountains, they see that the lodge that they're hiking to is directly across the way, and the only thing separating them from the lodge is this big dark forest. So showing that they could just cut directly through, but the way the trail goes around the trees takes, I think they say like 14 hours or more or something like that. So another day or two hike. And then it cuts to the next morning and they're all packing and they're hiking and it starts just pouring and it seems miserable. And Dom says one of my favorite lines in the movie, which is Sweden can lick my bridge. I just think it's funny the way that, I think it's Phil is like, what do you mean your bridge? And then Dom goes into a deep discussion about what he's talking about. And while he's screaming, he falls into a hole and twists his knee really bad.
And honestly, I'm on Sweden's side for that one.
That's fair. Yeah, Sweden's beautiful. I would go in a heartbeat.
It is. 100%.
But okay, so at this point, Hutch is clearly irritated and doesn't take Dom's pain seriously, which again shows us that Dom has always been a whiner. And Luke and Hutch discuss if they should attempt to take that shortcut through the forest that they saw earlier, or if they should take the 14-hour hike that they're on right now. Luke is the only one who makes a reasonable decision, which is to leave Phil and Dom behind and to hike ahead and go get help, which certainly seems like the most reasonable thing. But nobody listens, and they all decide to enter into the forest. So as they're walking down to the forest, there's more complaining. And then there's an interesting cut, and I don't know if this meant anything. I didn't look it up, but it cuts to like an abandoned van outside the woods, like one of those old bug van looking things. And while it cuts to it, there's like some ominous music playing. And Hutch looks at his compass, and it seems like it's like stuck or not working. And then the group pauses, and they do like a quick photo shoot, which I think is like hey, this is the last time everyone's going to be happy. Like, look at us taking fun pictures together. And then they go into the woods. And then so it starts, once they're in the woods, it starts with like a really eerie shot of the group hiking through the trees, and we see a lot of similar shots of this in the future where it's not the group, it's the monster that is going through the woods. Dom begins to complain again, which at this point I am begging that he's the first one in this movie to die, because it's obvious that people are going to die in this movie. And then as they're walking, they find this moose that is hanging in a tree, and it's ripped in half with its guts on the ground. And the group's looking at it and they're like, that's really weird. Like, how did it get up there? Do bears do that? And then I think it's Hutch notices that it's a fresh kill because it's still bleeding. So our first little ominous sign.
And I don't think, granted, I'm not like a naturologist or whatever, but I don't think that bears do a lot of creative storage with their kills. Like, they're not out there sticking them in like bear fridges or whatever. Which, actually, hey, Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie.
Yeah.
What kind of a fridge would a bear have?
Oh, gosh.
A fridge a bear?
A fridge. You're ridiculous. Did you just come up with that?
Thank you. Yes, you're welcome.
I could never. Anyway. What I was going to say is that I also, speaking of trash reality TV, this one's not trash. I watch a lot of Alone, and they normally, when they get kills, to keep the bears away from it, like make these big pole things and put it up high in trees. Now, I know bears can climb trees, but yeah, I don't think they're storing their food like that. Yeah. But anyway. So yeah, certainly not a bear. But as the group is in the woods, they begin to be lost and it's raining again. So now they're in the woods, lost and miserable, instead of being on the trail, not lost and miserable. So they decide to set up their tents, but while they're arguing about where to put them, Phil notices that there's some runes carved into I think it's just one tree at this point. And then right behind that tree is like a really old house or cabin that's clearly been abandoned. And then right before they enter the house, they hear some creatures screeching, and then they go inside.
There's like a discussion here about whether or not they should try to stay. Yeah. And one of them makes because I think it's kind of a smaller place or whatever. And one of them makes it'll be just like back at uni joke, which I thought was adorable because I think they're kind of just trashing their uni dorm experience.
Which is fair. I mean, previously when I said I have never really been in a sorority house, I have partied in some frat houses back in the day where I went to college, and they look about what this house is. It is kind of like uni. Also, I want to ask, if you were in this situation where you were stuck in the woods and lost and it was raining, would you go into the creepy abandoned house?
I feel like with the rain that they're dealing with and the cold, I would at least go in and look around and see if it's a viable option.
Yeah. I think I'd do the same. I think I'd certainly open the door and like see if there's any sign of life in there, but I would be uneasy about it.
Yeah, I would. I think a lot of me would be screaming, this is a bad idea. But if you're like, if it's raining sideways, and the other thing too is this forest is very dense. So if that much water is coming down on you and that structure is more sound, you've almost got it.
Yeah, that's true. I would really want to get out of the rain, but I don't know. But I do love a good abandoned building, so I'd certainly go in, but sleeping there, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah.
But okay, so like I said, they go in and then they explore the house just like we said. And they find upstairs this very strange figure that it seems to be made of sticks and antlers, and it appears to look like a headless human holding two very large antlers over its head, and its feet almost look like really large chicken feet.
Yeah, it is a very unsettling thing to find, let alone find in an abandoned cabin in the middle of what are supposed to be uninhabited woods. Yes. When you're lost and it's raining. Like just fear on top of fear on top of fear. I will say one of them I can't remember who says it, but one of them dares the other. He's like, I'll give you $1,000 to go sleep with that thing. And you just know that the monster fuckers on Book Talk absolutely love that joke.
That's so true. But okay, so follow-up question to the previous question. Now that you've seen the weird chicken feet thing upstairs, would you stay in the house?
Maybe if you had like a really, really careful watch system set up where like two of you have to stay awake while the other two are asleep or something, and you're all right there together, like just inside the door, maybe.
Yes, I agree. I 100% was literally going to say, I think I'd still want to stay because it's dry in there, but you have to set up a watch. Like, clearly these people don't play Dungeons and Dragons. You always set up a watch. But okay, so the group goes back downstairs and discuss what the figure might be. And Phil says it's like an idol or a deity or some kind of pagan thing. And Luke, who is the only sensible one yet again, suggests that in the morning they just go back the way they came because they're already lost and go back to the trail like they should. And for whatever reason, the group disagrees. So they all go to sleep after making a terrible decision. And Luke wakes up and he sees a very bright light outside, and the storm suddenly stops. So he's like, well, that's weird. So he opens the door, and this is the first time we get a flashback to the liquor store scene where Rob was murdered. And yeah, so I really like the way that this was shot, because it's cool because it looks like he's in the liquor store, but you know he's not, because the ground is still forest ground. So it's like got grass and dirt, but then the shelves are all there.
It's almost like, have you ever had a lucid dream?
All the time, constantly, yes.
So I don't know how they are for you, but when I have the dream will be happening, but almost as if it's like a transparent layer over wherever I am in real life. So I can see my window, I can see my bed, I can see, my feet or whatever, but the dream is also happening. So it's a weird thing where I know that I'm dreaming and I could even change the dream, but I can often also see the environment that I am really in real reality. And that scene with the liquor store and the forest kind of creeping in on the edges of it, that's what that reminded me of.
That is so cool. I lucid dream and I can change my dreams, and I know I'm dreaming, but I have never had like the panel, like that's really neat. I wish I had that.
It's a little creepy because sometimes my eyes are closed.
Right. So it's like in your brain.
So I'm like, I can't actually see this, but I can though.
That is so
anyway,
weird.
I'm probably fine.
No, we aren't. But that's okay. Anyway, okay. So back to the liquor scene. So he looks back towards the door in the liquor store where the robbers came out, and he's like stabbed in the chest, and you see like blood splatter on the bottle of vodka that he's holding. And then all of a sudden all the shelves are like violently ripped away into the forest. So he wakes up at this point, fully wakes up, and he's outside the cabin, and he's got 5 bloody holes in his chest. Like that looks like a handprint, or like someone put their fingers in him. And then he hears screaming coming back from the cabin. So he runs back, and he walks in, and Hutch is screaming, and he has clearly pissed his pants from having a bad dream. And then Dom's in the corner crying for his wife Gail, and then they can't find Phil, so they run upstairs, and he is completely naked, kneeling before the weird idol thing up there with like his hand over his head.
Call back to the monster fucker joke from earlier, but I thought the depicting Dom crying for his wife, I thought that was interesting because it kind of seems like it was meant to make him look really weak, but it's not weird that somebody would want their closest loved one when they're facing something terrifying. But I do think the other point of putting this here is kind of underscoring how the group dynamics of their friendship have changed with time, because they're not as close as they once were, and their family situations and life situations have changed, and I think that's part of the thread of what's going on with them.
Yeah, I like that. I think you're right, maybe where they're showing like Dom's weak, but this was the first time I didn't hate Dom, because I'm like, oh, okay, something scary happened and you want to your wife, the one person that you're supposed to love the most, like that's okay. After they all wake up, they decide to get the fuck out. But as soon as they step outside, they see so they saw the one rune the night before. Now they see that there's actually like hundreds of them all over every tree around this house. So at this point, they realize we messed up. We should not have stayed there. And from that point, they decide, okay, so now what are we going to do? And for some reason, they decide to continue to listen to Dom and not the 2 people, Luke and Hutch, who clearly know what they're doing. And they follow some completely random path through the mystery woods instead of going back the way that they came.
We should probably say the fall he took earlier after he told Sweden to lick his bridge, he was already not doing great as far as like breaking in the hiking shoes and everything else, but now his knee is really messed up.
That's true.
The excuse they keep coming back to for why they should just keep going through the woods instead of going around is basically, well, Dom's not going to make it. He can't take a longer route.
His knee's so screwed up. But so let's take this winding longer route through
right that they don't actually know and don't have a map for. Sure, why not?
Yeah, sure, why not? And let's not go in the direction that we know the lodge is. We'll follow this path. But yes, you're right that he's just like, well, maybe we can find people that will help us because my knee hurts. But those people are making weird things in the attic of like abandoned houses. Anyway, so while they're hiking, Phil says he wants to discuss why they all had nightmares but the night before, and he thinks that something in the house made him go upstairs. So he's kind of we see him starting to lose it a little bit, even though it is obvious that something made him go up the stairs in the house. But from a rational perspective, he's starting to lose it. Hutch is the one that remains rational, and he says, listen, it's just bad dreams. We need to just focus on this forest and get out of here. It's funny because at first I'm like, gosh, Hutch is such a tool. And then I'm like, no, I want to hike with Hutch every time. Like, he's the only good one here.
He's at least medium competent.
Exactly. And as they're hiking, this is the first time the scene kind of cuts out and you see something heavily breathing and watching the group as they hike. So dun dun dun, monster. And then they come across a second cabin, and I really like this part. They all stop and look at it, and then they all go, no, just keep walking.
Yeah, we learned from the last one.
Yes. And they, instead of realizing that this path is just going to lead them to more spooky cabins, continue to walk down the path thinking that they'll find something different. And as they're walking, Dom's leg begins to act up even more, so he wants to take a break. He takes a break, and Luke takes that opportunity to go look at the top of what they think is a ridge and see if they can see the lodge from there. As he gets up there, he realizes it's not actually a ridge. It's just more forest. He can't see anything except for the monster. So it's a cool scene where at first it just looks like this black hand at the top of a tree, or like way too high up of a tree for a person. And then as he like zooms in on it, all of a sudden this giant thing that I think looks like an ent like walks across the screen behind the trees.
I love this scene. I love it so much because you are peering into shapes and shadows of a forest, and suddenly part of that landscape is alive and moving, and you somehow also know it hates you, and this is bad.
It's bad, yes. And well, its size alone. But yeah, it is very like ominous. You know what I like about it is that the first monster reveal of this movie is in the daytime. It's not like during shadowy nighttime. It's like just out and about, which is, I think that's like, this guy, it does not care. It's going to stalk you night or day. It's coming for you. So,
well, also the contrast of what you see at first, because he's just peering through shadows and it's like shadowy trees and whatever. And then you see what looks like fingers that were wrapped. You only see it once it moves, but what looks like a hand wrapped around one of the trees moves, and then you see the rest of it start to move. Yeah. So that contrast between like a very human looking hand and this massive shadowy figure is jarring. Like your brain can't make that make sense.
True. Actually, it really can't. I had to watch it twice to be like, wait, what did I just see? So it really can't. So yeah, good scene. And then Luke runs back to the group, and he decides that this is a time to show them the wound on his chest and tells them that he saw something up in the woods. And Dom is like, no. I think at this point, like, what they're just trying to be like, everything's way too weird and I just want to get out of it here, so I'm just going to deny everything weird. So Dom's like, nope, you definitely did that to yourself. You walked into a tree. There are no monsters. And they start to fight. And the fight escalates to Dom finally revealing that he blames Luke for Rob's death, which is like a weird time to do it. I don't know that I would air my grievances when my friend is in a panic after seeing a giant monster up a hill. But, you know.
Well, also when you can't walk very well and you need to rely on them to save your life, probably.
Yes.
Like, clearly they're tired, cold, hungry, lost, scared. So nobody's brain is at peak performance at the moment. But still, I feel like that would kick in. Like, I should probably not make people start picking sides while I'm limping and we are lost.
Yes, that is so true. But you could tell Dom's very self-centered. So sure, he's not even thinking about it. And so after that, they decide, you know what? We're just going to focus on the fact that we fought and forget that Luke saw a monster. And they keep walking in silence until they finally stumble across an old tent that's just like peeking out of the ground a little bit. And they're like, what's that? So they dig it up. And it's a huge old tent, and they find a wallet in the tent with a photo of a family and a credit card that expired in 1984. And one of them says, that's a bad sign, isn't it? Leaving your tent behind and your shoes. Like, yes.
Thank you, Sherlock.
Yes.
And also, I'm pretty sure that the van from earlier was supposed to belong to this group.
Family's van, that would make sense.
Yeah, or if it isn't this family's van, it's kind of just establishing that, hey, sometimes people don't come back.
Yes, like if you go in these woods, you're not going to come back out. Yeah. So everyone's freaking out because clearly people have gone in these woods and not come back out, like we said. But Hutch, he stays rational. He's like, listen, that's not going to be us. We registered with the lodge. In 5 hours, they're going to report us missing and they're going to send out a search party. So he still has some hope at this point. So they decide to set up their tents, probably frighteningly close to the missing tent. And Luke and Hutch have a chat about what they're going to do in the morning. And finally, Hutch says, hey, Luke, listen, you're the strongest one of us. I'm going to stay here and take care of the weaklings. They like the Dom's legs getting too bad. Phil is like sick or something. I don't know. He says Phil's having a hard time. And he goes, take the compass, keep southwest, go find help. So Luke agrees and they all go to bed. However, change of plans. As Luke is trying to fall asleep, he hears footsteps outside the tent, or like twigs breaking, and then all of a sudden a roar. And he opens the tent and he looks out and has another hallucination of Rob's murder. But this time, the murderers look at Luke and call him a coward. And the Ent monster thing from earlier walks by and it rips Hutch's tent away. So when that happens, Phil wakes up screaming, saying, it's here, it's here. And they realize Hutch is gone and they hear him painfully shrieking in the distance while the roaring continues. And Dom is the one who kind of turns out to be the coward this time when one of their friends is in danger. And he says, hey, we have to stop running through the woods. We're going to lose all of our stuff. Like, we left it back out at the tents. We don't know where we're at. It's dark. We'll find Hutch in the morning. We're not going to be able to find him now. So they agree to stop and let Hutch be taken away by the monster. And then it cuts to the morning and we see the group and they're sitting on logs without their tents and bags. So clearly they were lost and they could not find their way back to their tents. So they've lost their food, they've lost their tents, they've lost everything. But now that the sun's up, they do decide to go look for Hutch, and they find him dead in the tree the same way the moose had been hanging that they saw the day before. Which I do want to say, I thought Hutch being the first one to die was it was not what I thought would happen. When I was watching this movie, I thought for sure Dom would be the first to die. Like, that's like the normal horror movie trope that like the weak complainer dies first, or like the hippie whatever loser that's not helping, they die first. And the smart characters survive at least second to last. So for Hutch to go first kind of sucked.
It does, but I actually think that is speaking to the intelligence of the monster.
That's so true, because it wants them to be helpless. So yeah, it absolutely does show that not only does the monster know that it doesn't need to hide from this group because it's stronger and better than them, but it is smart. So yeah, That's a really good point.
Which I don't think the characters seem to realize that in the movie, but I think if they had, it would have made us, a billion times scarier for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly scary, but I think that at this point they're more sad than they are scared, which is valid. I don't know what I would be in that moment. But so they're freaking out after finding Hutch, and Dom insists on burying Hutch, which is also fair.
Okay, so let's talk about this.
Yeah.
You're with friends and somebody gets violently murdered and like pinned up in a tree. You think it's a monster, but you don't know that it's not like some sort of deranged serial killer.
Right.
And
you don't know.
Like, why would you, like, burying the body? I don't know. You could be contaminating a crime scene, but also they don't have shovels or anything. They just kind of throw a bunch of sticks on top of him.
They do.
Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like sticks and moss or something that they just kind of pile on top of him, which, I don't know. Again, I feel like I would be battling with myself. Like, do we try to put this person in some protective state so we can send a recovery team later? Or do we leave him exactly as is so that the investigation can do what the investigation needs to do? Because, I mean, could they be blamed for the death?
Oh, that's true. Like, could they be blamed that they did it? I mean, gosh, I feel like gut instinct, panic. I'm not thinking the fact that this might be an active crime scene. I'm thinking like, oh my God, my friend's up there. Like, I got to get him down. Like, we got to figure out what happened to them. We got to get his stuff because they don't have any of their stuff. So I think I would pull my friend down without thinking about it.
Yeah, I might too. Like we talked about earlier, you never know how you'll react until you're in the moment. But it's just, if I'm by myself, maybe I do one thing and not the other. But there's a couple of them there, they could have a discussion. I don't know. I don't know that pulling them down would be the right thing to do, given what they know at that moment.
That's fair. That's a good point. Well, and you said that they should have a discussion, but we've seen throughout this movie that nobody's having any discussions with Dom. He's just doing whatever the heck he wants. So
communication is lacking.
Lacking, yes. Yeah, so like we said, they pull Hutch down off the tree, they cover him with sticks and moss, and then they continue on their hike. While they're hiking, they find, this is so dumb, this made me so mad. I know that they're thirsty, but they find some still water. And everybody knows that you don't drink still muddy water, you only drink moving water, because it's just full of bacteria and parasites and flesh-eating amoebas. So I hated that.
Right, and it's been raining. Like, it's not like they couldn't have collected some.
You're right. It's been pouring. Yeah. But so anyway, they drink out of this literal puddle, and then they see, while they're drinking out of it, they look over and they see muddy footprints leading away from the water. And even though the whole reason they chose to follow the path that they're following was to find people, they go, no, we're not going to follow that, and continues to head southwest, which I guess before, when they were looking for people, their friend hadn't been brutally murdered and hung from a tree. So change of plans. But I just think it's funny that they're like, no, we're not going that way. So it goes to them failing miserably to hike up a hill. And as they're doing that, there's a shot of a monster just like walking in the background of the group, following them, like very obviously just following them everywhere they go. Phil is continuing to lose it a little bit, and for some reason appears like incredibly weak. He like falls down the hill. Luke has to literally pull him up and carry him, and Luke is clearly the only hope of survival at this point. And they finally make it to the top of the ridge, and there's a rare moment of hope where Luke looks up and he can say, I can see the end. Hutch was right. And it's like a happy moment. There's like nice music playing. It seems like what could be the end of the horror movie, but then little fires or like torchlights start to appear on the hillside, and it kind of, the tone shifts back. And
yeah, it's very unsettling. It's just, you see fire, so you're like, oh good, but the way it appears, and I think they kind of accomplish it with the music too, but you're just like, oh wait, this might not be good.
Right. Yeah. I think the music plays a big part here, because you're like, oh, happy ending, they're gonna survive, and then it goes back to ominous. And but I do like watching the torches slowly light. Like, it's like, oh, we're not done here. This is
it's well done.
Yeah. So Luke goes back down to find Dom and Phil, and Phil's looking around with his flashlight because they say they heard something. And then all of a sudden he's ripped away by what we assume is the monster, and we can assume he's been eaten as well, or ripped open, whatever. And then Luke turns around and does the first dumb thing in this movie. He runs so fast that he knocks himself out, running straight into a tree.
He does.
Yeah. And while he's on the ground, he starts to have the vision of the liquor store again. And the light of that vision leads him back to Phil's flashlight, and he picks up the flashlight. He finds Dom hiding under a tree, and he goes and he hides with Dom, and Dom's like, yeah, I don't know where Phil is. We heard something. I hid here. I don't know what's going on. And they decide they need to run. So Phil's like, okay, listen, Dom, I need you to run. I know your knee hurts, but we're doing this on the count of 3. And I think it's funny because he counts to 3 and then neither of them move, which is like such a real moment.
Yes, it was. I loved that.
Yeah, it was so like, that would be me. Like 1, 2, 3. Oh wait, we actually have to do this? No thanks. They run, and they are following the path, and they find Phil dead in the tree and continue to stay on the well-lit fire path.
They're like, you don't get a shitty barrel from us, sorry.
Right? That's so true. And as they're running from what they assume is a monster that just killed their friend, they violently burst into a cabin and that they find at the end. And they hear immediately like some creepy folk music playing and like chanting happening. And they see a person standing in front of some sort of shrine thing, and then cuts to black. They're knocked out.
And I do have some things to tell you about that shrine later. So pin in that.
Ooh, I'm excited for that because I did not pay attention to it. I'm excited. Okay, so after they're knocked out, Luke wakes up to Dom telling him to wake up, and they're tied up without shoes or pants on for whatever weird reason. I don't know why they took their pants. And they hear really strange like chanting and yelling coming from the floor above them, and you can't really tell, is it people, is it animals? It's a weird noise. And so they're trying to figure out where they're at, and Luke manages to remove some like dust or dirt that's holding the log cabin that they're in together, and he peeks out and he sees a bunch of people outside the building, and it looks like they're building something out of logs. So they explore various ways to escape out of this room, but they fail. And then 3 people enter the room, 2 men and 1 really old lady who keeps chewing on something, and the lady brings Luke water to drink and makes him drink it after she examines him in his chest. And I have to say, I have this thing where, like, I cannot stand when people eat loud or chew loud.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, yeah.
what, like, the rage it fuels in me it's insane. Watching this scene and watching this lady, like, chew, if I was Luke, like, yes, I want to drink that water, but I would be like, get the F out of my face. Like, I don't think I could handle it. It made me so, the scene was so, I immediately didn't like that lady. But anyway, so she's examining Luke's chest wound and shows him that she has the same one on her chest, but she hasn't said a word the whole time. She just shows him and then walks away. And she does not offer Dom any water. And Luke says, hey, aren't you going to give him water? And then the two men grab Dom and they hit him over the head and they take him upstairs where he's screaming. And it's pretty, like, aggressive. Like, he's clearly getting tortured or killed or something.
Yeah, it's really awful noises.
Yes.
And they're uncomfortable to listen to. And they never show what's happening. That you just hear the commotion and you hear the screaming and you know he's being hurt. And you kind of watch Luke have to sit there and just listen helplessly. Kind of like when he watched his friend die.
Exactly. Just like that. Yeah, it's really disturbing. But this time, instead of just watching or listening to his friend die, a young woman walks into the cabin while this is happening. And she comes over and she covers Luke's ears and tells him they're preparing Dom for a sacrifice, but it'll be over soon. So there's like a cut where Dom continues to scream with like voices chanting, and Phil eventually passes out again while this is happening. He's laying on the floor while Dom's brought back in, still alive, but bloodied up. And Luke asks him if he's okay. Dom's clearly very much not okay. He proceeds to tell Luke about the nightmare he had, which was that he saw people offering him to the monster, and during that he saw his wife, Gail. And he was like, I know that dream means I'm going to die here. And Luke tells him he's not going to die, and it's just one of those moments where Dom's like, tell my wife I love her kind of thing. And then he also says, make sure you make these people pay. Like, get out of here and make sure that these people pay for what they did. Dom is taken outside while Luke is still chained up, and they tie him to the thing they were building earlier, which is like this almost like a crucifix kind of pole thing. And he looks up in the trees and sees a bunch of dead people hanging from the trees.
And did you notice the shape of the post that he's tied up on it? You mentioned it looks like a crucifix or a cross, but did you notice it?
No.
It's actually a rune from the Elder Futhark runes, and it's specifically the elk rune. So for listeners, if you can picture a capital letter Y, but there's an extra post in the middle of the arms of the Y, that's the elk rune, and that's what Dom is tied to.
Well, that's really cool, actually. I did not notice that. So that's I love that. And that ties to the monster, which I'm sure you'll tell us about.
Exactly.
Okay, so it fades to the night, and Luke's continue trying to get out of the cabin while the monster begins to approach Dom. And it cuts to Luke inside the cabin, breaking his thumbs to slip him out of the ropes, which, ouch. And Dom's outside freaking out. He's like, what are you waiting for? Like, let's just get this over with already. And then he hears the roar of the monster and changes his tune a little bit. But as he's looking at the woods through this like tunnel of trees that the monster's going to come out of, instead of seeing the monster, he sees his wife, Gail. And Gail comes up to him and she grabs him by the face. And then you see Gail turns into the monster, and the monster's looking Dom in the eyes and then picks him up and impales him in the tree. And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say about the monster here, but like, it is kind of creepy.
It's incredibly creepy. It's unsettling. It's just terrifying, and it's also really, really, really cool.
It is kind of cool. It's weird. It's cool. It's a lot of things, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say about it. So yet again, Luke has let actually now all of his friends die, and he's sitting there with his broken hands in the log cabin, and the woman from earlier comes back in, and she tells him the monster's an ancient god. It's a bastard offspring of Loki, and they worship him, and it keeps him alive for a long time with no pain and no death. And she said he was specifically chosen because his pain is great, so we can assume they're talking about him having to watch his friend being murdered. So Luke, after that woman leaves, he sneaks out of the room and goes upstairs, where he finds a room full of what appears to be mummified people sitting in like wooden church pews almost. and they're all facing one creepy mummified dude like on a throne at the front of the room. And Luke walks through these people, and then you can't really tell, are they effigies, are they real, are they sticks, are they just dead people? And then one begins to breathe and scream, and Luke makes a very rational decision, which is to immediately burn the room down. Which you have to. What else are you doing here? So then he goes downstairs, and cue my bloody shovel award, he punches the annoying old chewing lady in the face, and she falls over.
It's very funny.
It's hilarious. And it's great because it's what I would want to do too, because she's just chewing so loud.
And I'm sure that they used a stunt double here, but that actor, she's like 4'5" in real life. She's tiny.
She is.
So just
tiny.
the vision, like, and it looks that way on screen too. So just the visual of this, like, you know, I don't know, he's probably like 5'11" man, well built, just punching the shit out of her down the stairs. It's so funny.
It is hilarious. So yes, there's my bloody shovel. And then, so cuts to outside. The monster's pissed that his house and all of the people upstairs are burning down, and decides that it's going to just start murdering everybody. And it's just picking up random people, throwing them, ripping them in half, putting them on trees, doing whatever it wants to do. So during this chaos, Luke makes a great escape. And there is one creepy, like, moment where the arms of the monster lean in the door and look at Luke in the face, but it can't get to him because it's too big to go in the cabin. And then Luke gets out, and it's one of my like favorite. I think it's gorgeous, where Luke goes and he's looking back at the burning cabin, and you just see for the first time the full side profile of the monster cut against the fire. And it's just like really beautiful. And
we are definitely going to talk more about this at the end, but I am so happy that you thought this was beautiful. I am so happy that my freak and your freak are just perceiving this the same way. Yes. I love it.
But it is, I don't know, I just really like that scene. I would have it as a screensaver. Okay. And then, so from that shot, Luke goes back to the trend of stupidity and tries to shoot the giant monster with a very old rifle, as if that would do anything to it if it even did hit him. And obviously it does nothing but make the monster mad. So cue an epic chase scene where Luke tries to race out of the woods as fast as he can while the monster's chasing him. The monster does eventually catch up to Luke and grabs him, and it forces him to kneel before him to complete the ritual that he's supposed to be completing to become eternal or immortal or whatever. And Luke decides to refuse. So he stands up, and it pushes him back down onto his knees. And this time when Luke's on the ground, the monster stands up, and it turns into the shape, like its arms and legs and antlers all line up, where it looks exactly like the creepy idol that we saw in the first cabin that they spent the night in. And it's a very cool visual of just like the shadowy monster. And I almost wish Luke would have finished the ritual so we could know what happens next, but we do not.
Save that for the fan fiction.
Yes, because in this moment, Luke attempts to stand up, and he grabs the big axe that he has with him and swings it and hits the monster in the side, which somehow an axe works better against the god monster than a bullet. But after he hits it with an axe, it buys him enough time where he runs out of the woods where the monster can no longer chase him. So Luke finally gets out through the end of the woods. The monster's stuck in the woods. It seemingly can't come out. And Luke realizes this and turns around and does this like triumphant, like adrenaline scream back into the woods. And then the movie ends with a shot of Luke walking through the mountains, the sun rising, and birds chirping.
End of movie.
So yes, Eleanor, it's now time for you to tell us what you know about this monster and all the cool things about this movie.
I love this movie, as I keep saying. Did you know that this was a book?
I did not. I don't think I did know that.
So it's a book. It's by the horror author Adam Neville, and I want you to know 4 things about this.
Okay.
The first thing is that the friend at the beginning and his death in the liquor store, that's completely made up for the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, that character and his horrible death do not exist in the book. Other than that, the story is almost exactly the same for the first 2/3.
Okay.
The last third is wildly different. There are similar elements, but it is not the same story at all.
Okay.
The third thing is that little old lady character, she is in the book, and her role in the plot is significant. And I have a fourth and final thing that is a special surprise for you.
Okay.
There is a major black metal plot line to the book.
Really?
Yes.
Look at
Yes.
that. Who would have thunk? Black metal and horror. They just were meant to
We
be.
keep coming across it. So you could literally, I have the book, you can borrow it. You could literally just read the last 1/3 of it, like the last third of it, and, not lose anything from, read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But you could just read the last third to know kind of where it deviates. But
I want to.
You kind of have to now.
Yes.
I've teased you.
I have no choice. Yes.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the motivation of the director. I read an interview in the Reel Roundup, and he had this really interesting quote. This is the director, David Bruckner. He says, quote, "I think in horror, I'm always looking for some sort of contemporary anxiety that is familiar to me. I think you go to the movies to see all of your nightmares kind of come to life. But if that's primed by a more familiar set of anxieties, then that's where we build a common space with the audience in a lot of senses. And I think the idea of men in their 30s becoming aware of their own personal limitations and dealing with that as a group of old friends and maybe growing apart as well felt really, really fresh to me and actually unexplored." End quote.
I do love that. Because as you say that, I'm racking my brain for like another horror movie where there's a group of men and they're discovering their vulnerabilities together. Like just men. I don't think, like when he says it's unexplored, I think he's right. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah, and there's a lot of layers to that too, like the arrogance of some of the characters who don't really do much to prepare for this trip. Like they didn't break their shoes in.
Yeah.
They didn't bring the right equipment or whatever, like that kind of male arrogance. I'll figure it out. Everything works out for me.
Yeah, you're totally right. Like this is the first time they're like experiencing something because they think like, oh, well, it's just woods. How bad could it be? Like not realizing like there's a reason this path goes around these woods. It's because people get lost in those woods. Like you're not better than everybody else. And then them experiencing that for the first time and how vulnerable they are. I like that.
And there's also kind of this like horror of the mundane, which is the sorrow. Like there's this sorrow because they have no control over their situation. They had no control over their friend dying horribly. And their relationships are changing too with each other. Like they're not as close as they once were, or maybe they were never that close. And so now they're growing older. Some of them have wives and kids, kind of trying to like relive this time that they had together that will never be like that again. And there's kind of like a sorrow there. And that sorrow, that sense of loss, and that kind of horror just of everyday life, that's happening. And also this supernatural horror starts to unfold.
Beautiful. I love it. I mean, that makes me like the movie more.
I feel like this podcast is starting to evolve into we are each trying to convince each other that you actually love the movie more than you realize.
Yes, 100%. Like, please love this movie as much as I do.
And there's some really cool stuff, like just about the setting. The film, I know it says it was set in Sweden. It was actually filmed in the Carpathian Mountains in Romania. Something super cool. I love this so much. I like squealed when I was reading about it. That first hut that they slept in, perhaps an ill-advised decision, that is real wood made from old buildings in northern Romania. So the set designer actually got some people to go disassemble some old buildings, and they rebuilt that entire cabin just for this.
Well, that is really cool. I love that. 'Cause, I mean, it is a cool cabin, and it's structurally sound, and you could tell it was made by somebody who knew what they were doing. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I mean, the stairs didn't collapse when they were running up and down them or whatever.
Yes.
And it's holding a whole monster up there, so it's sound.
Exactly.
Also, this is so cool. They had the film crew had to hire actual snipers because Romania has a huge bear problem, especially in the woods where they were filming. So at night, because they were filming in the actual nighttime, they had to have a circle of snipers around their set.
Oh my God.
And they did see it. Now there were no attacks, but they did see.
Ask.
Yeah, they did see bears. They definitely saw them.
So they didn't have to shoot any. They just saw.
No,
That's
there was no
crazy.
violence. The bears are safe.
That's good.
So let's talk about the monster. You heard at one point in the movie the villagers say that the monster is a Jotun. Now, it's spelled, for listeners who want to follow along, it's spelled Jotunn, and the O has like an umlaut over it. This is a race of giants or trolls from Norse mythology. So it's a category of a being. It's not a specific creature. In the movie, they say he's a son of Loki, but they won't speak its name. We never actually learn what to call the monster, but what we do know is that in Norse mythology, Loki was known for having rather monstrous offspring. It's like one of his things.
Okay, so is this monster that's in this movie, is there a myth attached to it? Like, is this a real thing? Well, a real mythological thing, or what?
It is not. It was invented for this movie.
Bummer. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, we talked briefly about that shrine that woman was sitting in front of when Luke ran into the cabin.
Yeah.
This is really neat. That's actually a really good reproduction of something called the Kirkby Stevens stone, or the Loki stone. And this is a 1,000-year-old Viking-era relic in England, and it depicts a figure that many think is Loki. So in the legend, Loki gets bound by his fellow gods to a stone and tormented by a fiery venom that's being dripped from a serpent. Scholars think that this carving was actually the base of a large stone cross that featured a motif including Christian imagery. So there's speculation that the Loki image could be a bound devil, and that the rest of the imagery included like the dominance of the new Christian religion. So basically, your old gods are weak and dead, and there's a new one in town.
Interesting.
And this theme is very much present in the book.
Gosh, I have to read this book. But that's an interesting, I mean, first off, that's awesome. I love that this is like, that's imagery from a real stone. But it's an interesting image for the people here who worship the offspring of Loki, to worship like an image of him being tortured and killed, but instead of like him in his prime.
Right. Or is this the only piece of that relic that they either chose to preserve, or, was it the only piece that still remained? And is this kind of motivating them? Like, we're going to bring our old gods back. And I did include a picture for you if you can see it.
Is that Loki?
Yep, that's a picture of the actual Loki stone.
That is so cool. I am definitely including this in my bucket list of things to go see before I die. This is a real thing in a real place, right?
Yes, you can go see it. From what I understand, you can go see this now. I'll include a link in our show notes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's super cool.
So we see that the monster can kind of change shapes, right? And we know that shape-shifting is common in Norse mythology. And the monster in the ritual seems to appear to the victim as either something terrifying, his true form, or as a vision of their loved ones right before it consumes them. So I know we've both talked about loving the monster. Maybe we should describe it a little bit more. Like, if you had to describe this to someone who's never seen the movie before, how would you describe it?
So yeah, this monster, it really depends on like how you're seeing it, because there's so many different elements and aspects of it. So first off, it's huge. Like I said, when you first see it in the movie, I thought it was an ent, which is just like a living tree monster, because it was so big the way it moved through the woods. And then later you see that it's actually more animalistic, and it looks like a deer or a moose or an elk or something. I like too that it's like super skeletal. So it was as big as the cabin was, right? When in that scene with the fire.
I think so. I think it's like the size, I think, of like a woolly mammoth.
Yeah, right. That's about a woolly mammoth size. Certainly bigger than a human, like 2 or 3 humans tall. And it looks like a skeleton, but it has flesh, and it looks like an elk, but where its neck is a human torso. And it's got these like weird yellow eyes that stare into its victims and makes the victim see whatever they want. And then it like, I think it's creepy how its hands are used so much, where it like lovingly caresses Dom's cheeks like the way his wife would, as it's carrying him to impale him into a tree. So yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's eldritch horror is what it is. It's so hard to wrap your mind around. It's very scary. It's unsettling. I love it so much. It's a beautiful, horrible monster, and I love it.
It is.
So I read an article on Screen Rant that talked about the design of the monster, and the director, David Bruckner, and the concept artist, Keith Thompson, had this vision for, quote, a Norse animal god and how to give it human qualities, end quote. So the result is this giant, like, moose/stag elk thing that also has a human torso around its head. and it's super, super creepy. You already kind of talked a little bit about the creature's eyes. In this article, the visual effects supervisor, Ben White, explains that Bruckner, quote, wanted it to look like the male genitals had been ripped out, leaving flaps of skin, end quote.
What?
So, yes, right? Wasn't expecting that. But when you think about this monster design choice in relation to what the director was saying about men in their 30s becoming aware of their own limitations, I think we're talking about emasculation. Yeah, I think that kind of underlies their horror that they're experiencing even before they ever see the monster. It's a lack of control. They couldn't control what happened to their friend. They can't control the environment they're in. They can't control anything, really. They're at, the mercy of this place and where they are. And also an ancient horror, undying god is after them.
Yes, that's crazy. That's such a good point. I love the meaning behind this now that I know more about it. Anxiety, emasculation, vulnerability, lack of control. Good. It's a good movie.
It's definitely exploring, I feel like, a lot of male insecurities and mental health issues that men face. And I like that the director called that out, because I do think it comes through on screen.
I think so too.
So yeah, that's The Ritual. So what do you think? Horror, sad, something else? What is this movie?
It's because I love that there's so much behind it, and there is a little bit, like we talked about, of a psychological element here. I want to say that it's something else, but I don't think it is. I think it is at its core horror. It's a cool horror. It's a unique horror. It's not like a original slasher horror movie trope kind of horror, but I do just call this one a classic horror. What about you? What do you think? Yeah.
No, I do. I agree. It's definitely horror. I think it's different levels of horror, and I think that might be one of my, other than the really cool monster, I think that's part of what really appeals to me about this. There's social horror and modern horror kind of underlying things with the friend group, but it's also very primal and ancient. I will add, this is one of my all-time favorite horror movies, but it's also, I think, one of my favorite movies, period. And this type of horror movie is my favorite. So whether you're talking, well, actually not even just movie, but like a book or a movie, any story like this, the idea that there is something deep in the dark that is older than time and wants to kill you is just so primal. It gets me right in my bones. And I know when we were choosing our list of movies for the first few episodes, we kind of went back and forth about this one because we both really love it. Or really, I love it, and I just won't stop leaving you alone about it.
No, I like it too. I like it too.
But now that we're doing this podcast, I'm really excited to see if The Ritual remains one of my favorites, or if it gets a new challenger, either for, a different monster or a different movie. So yeah.
You've just challenged me. I will somehow find a new movie to make your favorite. That's my goal.
Okay. We have many to explore, so I'm very excited for that. Thank you for joining me in this journey, Charlie.
Perfect. Well, yeah. Well, this is a good one. I like this movie, and I'm glad we got to talk about it. But I think that's it. Did you have anything else before we go?
Nope. I think we are done digging around for today.
All right. So may the horrors persist.
But don't take the shortcut through the bear-infested forests. Thanks for listening to Horror Sandbox. For show notes, credits, and contact information, check out our website at www.horrorsandbox.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Horror Sandbox. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with all the horror fans in your life.
What's